So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Today is part of a long-running series of answering questions on the subreddit Ask HR on Reddit because I'm banned, and there are a lot of interesting takes to these things, and it's important things that you should know about your workplace, and that's why we're talking about them today. First question is whether or not they should get paid for a meeting. It's actually out of the legal advice subreddit, and then the next one is from Maryland, and it asks whether or not HR can ask something. And then finally, is taking a pill an accommodation out of Tennessee? So first up is, should I get paid for this meeting? This person works in security in Oklahoma, jobs transitioning from one company to another. New company has set up a meeting to do onboarding benefits, and the attendance is mandatory, but they have to attend on their personal time. Is it legal for them not to pay us? So the way the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, requires employers to pay workers for hours that they, quote, suffered or, quote, permitted to work. To determine whether or not they suffered or permitted to work, you can review the fact sheet on hours worked. It's down below, links down below if you want to check it out. But attendance at lectures, meetings, or training programs don't need to be paid if only if there are these four criteria: attendance is outside normal hours, attendance is voluntary, events not job related, and no other work is concurrently being performed. So, in this scenario, attendance is not voluntary, event is job related, and it is presumably during normal working hours, although that's not specifically said. And as a result, it does need to be paid legally, and that's an important thing for workers to know. Work that is required to be done to get things going is required to be paid if it's mandatory, and that's the biggest important thing. Frankly, onboarding benefits and scheduling needs to be done during work anyway. I think that's just good labor practices, but beyond that, it does need to be paid. Next up is out of Maryland. I want to clarify this before we get going. It says, I work remotely in Maryland for a company headquartered in California as an exempt employee. To be clear here, where you work is what matters, not where the company is headquartered. Frankly, most companies are legally in Delaware, or a huge portion are, because of various tax reasons. And so the idea that it's, quote, headquartered in California is irrelevant. It's where you work, and you work in Maryland. And with remote work continuing to be larger and bigger and more involved, people have to start understanding the difference. Their employer asked them to perform part of a client project at next weekend, 9 to 5, said, I couldn't work over the weekends, but not those hours. I could work over the weekends, but not those hours because they have plans. And this escalated to HR. It should not escalate to HR at all. Frankly, that's not HR's job. The manager should have asked what the conflicting activities were. And this person asked if she could ask that, which I don't know why. I guess there are, a scenario where, like, if you were conducting work outside, or if you were doing things outside of work, you can't be held accountable for those things. And that's only in certain states, like New York, for example. But ultimately, what the HR person is asking is, do you have a funeral? Because if you have a funeral, okay, like, let's talk about it. But if you just have some sort of work, there's no reason that she can't ask you that type of question. And made the point, HR made the point that they're exempt, so they have to work whenever they have to, despite the declared working hours. And what I always say, and this is just the true nature of the employment law in the United States. It's not really a reflection of what I prefer or like or believe, but exempt employees work both 0 hours and infinity hours, or however many hours are in a week. It's not, it's not a 40-hour work week. It can be a 20-hour work week. It's not likely to be, but it can be a 20-hour work week. It's also a 124-hour work week. And that's the nature of exempt employees in the workplace in the United States. So the last question is, taking a pill an accommodation? They've been putting no on applications when they're asked if they need any accommodations to perform the job, but they have to take a pill every 5 hours, and just swallow it with water. They don't want to drink from the bathroom sink or take it dry. Totally understand, agreed. So technically, taking a pill could be an accommodation. because if you're working line work or factory work and you have to leave, then that's something that could technically be an accommodation. However, generally speaking, you don't have to put it on the applications at all. The accommodation, you could request an accommodation as when you start. Your biggest concern is an accommodation that might interfere with doing the job successfully, and ultimately that's not what's going to happen here, right? You're not going to have that problem. I mean, frankly, you'll most likely have a lunch break, and so you just take it at your lunch break, and then you're good to go. But I mean, I think it's an interesting question. It is just the act of taking a pill alone could be considered an accommodation, but in most environments, that it's not going to be, right? It isn't going to be, and it's not going to be a problem for any employer. So the answer is yes, but do you need to disclose it? No. Does it really matter? No, not too much. But I think it's a good question, and it's a good thing I wanted to highlight here. Let me know what you think about these. I think that these questions are important questions to ask and important questions for people to be understanding their rights as employees in the American workplace. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.